Hey guys, the purpose of this video is to give you some guidance regarding comparative essay writing in VCE English. So you should know by now that in your examination, whether at a Year 11 or a Year 12 level, you will need to be writing a comparative essay that compares two texts with the focus on how these two texts can enrich our understanding of certain ideas, issues, or themes. So this presentation, the purpose is to give you a bit of guidance and a bit of direction as to how you can actually do that. So the first thing we're going to do is unpack two key criteria in the rubric at a VCE level. Now, I'm only dealing with the first two because the last two relate to how you structure your work and your written expression, which I'm not going to be talking about too much in this particular video. So we need to look at the first two criteria to try and understand exactly what the content of your essay is going to be like, or what it's going to be about. So if we look at the first one, it says sophisticated understanding of the texts and how they convey ideas, issues, and themes from different perspectives. The identification of highly significant connections and areas for comparison. So to translate that into more digestible English, what that means is three things. Understanding of the texts. Well, that's fairly straightforward. You need to know the texts well. That goes without saying. Number two, how they convey. What this means is you need to know how the creators present ideas. So in that sense, you need to try and put yourself into the shoes of the creators of the texts, whether it's a filmmaker or an author. So perhaps it's through action, perhaps it's through certain character traits, perhaps it's through their use of language, perhaps it's their use of film techniques or symbolism. So how they convey means what they use or what they do to present ideas. And number three, highly significant connections and areas for comparison. You need to be picking relevant and precise moments to compare, and hopefully you have been doing that throughout your revision. The next one is probably the most crucial because lots of people know how to put a lot of content into their essays, and generally most of us already know a lot about the texts because we study them in a fair bit of depth. However, the comparative aspect is what I think sets people apart. So again, we'll break this down. There are three main parts to this: sustained and insightful comparison that presents an enriched understanding of the ideas, issues, and themes in both texts through complex analysis of the similarities and or differences. Considered use of textual evidence to support the comparative analysis. So again, breaking that down into more digestible English. One, presents an enriched understanding of the ideas, issues, and themes in both texts. So number one, you should explain how comparing the texts can help us to learn or understand something about certain ideas and issues. There's a bit of a typo there, but you get the idea. So that's actually the whole point of your essay. You're not just presenting to us your knowledge of the texts, but you're trying to explain to us how comparing the texts will help us to understand certain ideas, issues, and themes better. Right? That's the whole point. The whole point is to show your understanding of how comparison can actually enrich our understanding. So that's going to be, to me, the most key aspect of your essay. Notice in number two that you have to analyze similarities and or differences. It doesn't prescribe both. So that means you could focus on all differences in your essay, or you could focus on just similarities. It doesn't really matter. And number three, of course, you must use textual evidence to support your explanation. So make sure you know your quotes, make sure you know how you can use the text to support your interpretations. Alright, let's move on to structure. So your introduction should have 4 components to it. They are not too difficult and not too dissimilar to your regular introductions in text response essays or language analysis essays. The only real difference is that you have to introduce both texts. Your body paragraphs is probably where your writing is going to vary the most, and so I'm going to spend a fair bit of time on body paragraphs. Here are the 3 things that your body paragraphs have to include, and I've deliberately not put teal or any kind of structure in here because, again, I find that it can impede your writing style. And it can also sometimes trick you into, maybe unknowingly or not intentionally, trick you into adopting a pretty rigid and robotic structure, which ends up sounding really forced. So I just want to apply some principles here rather than getting you to follow something checkbox by checkbox. So of course you need a clear topic sentence, but it should respond to the prompt. One of the biggest pitfalls, that students fall into is beginning their paragraph with a description of what happens in a particular scene or moment in a novel or a play or a film. The pitfall there is that you'll just end up describing what happens rather than focusing on how you're responding to the prompt. So your topic sentence should always respond directly to the prompt. For example, if you have a prompt that focuses on the theme of guilt, then you should have a topic sentence that responds directly to that theme. Now, comparative analysis of both texts is obviously the main part of your body paragraphs. And you might wish to do this in a couple of ways. You might want to compare throughout. That's a little more difficult, but it's also sophisticated, and it shows your understanding of both texts and how you can weave those together. You could also deal with text 1 first and then use text 2 to compare. So you could have two separate body paragraphs, or you could compare them both in the same body paragraph, except just dealing with one and then the other. Of course, you must use textual evidence, that goes without saying. You also need an explanation of what the comparison can help us to learn or understand about a certain idea, issue, or theme. Now, it's up to you where you want to put this explanation. It might be dotted throughout your paragraph, or it might be at the very end, kind of like a linking sentence, but mainly focusing on what the comparison can actually help us to learn or understand. And really, I will be looking out for that mostly if I were an examiner, because that, again, is the whole point of the essay. Alright, so you might want to pause the video here. These are two ways that you can form your body paragraphs. On the left-hand side, you have the orange and the gold. Those are two separate body paragraphs where you can deal with text 1 and then text 2, or you can integrate them into the same body paragraph, which is the blue. There are comparative phrases on the right. For those of you who are at my school, they are also in your booklet. There's a whole list of them that you can use. It's not a whole one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You need to make sure that you're using them correctly as well, but I've just included some examples there. Alright, for the next few slides, you probably should pause the video and have a look at the sample writing that I've used. They are examples of body paragraphs that pertain to the two different structures. So I'll show you the first one here. This is the second paragraph that's dealing with the second text. And this is a paragraph that deals with both texts in the same paragraph. Okay, so your conclusion. You should reword the essay topic and your contention, summarize the paragraph ideas, and close with a moral message from both texts, which is not dissimilar to ultimately what most conclusions focus on. Just with the moral message from both texts, you could take that as also the understandings or the learnings that we can draw from the actual comparison. Okay, so it's quite basic. Hope that helped. Again, you may want to watch this video a few times. You may want to study the examples closely. Just take note that this is just my way of doing these two styles of paragraphs. If you do them differently, it's not a big deal. These are the things that you must include. So take those as principles. Don't take those as checkboxes that you just need to tick off. You don't have to copy exactly what I've done here, and I would advise you not to, because it actually cramps your style, and that is not the purpose of this video. We're not trying to box you into a particular way of writing, just giving you some guidance about what it might look like so that you got something, not ironically, but ideally here, to compare to your own work.